Hey guys, welcome back. The Spoiler Effect is back in action to help you guys become better communicators. I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction today than I usually do. I am a teaching associate here at Bemidji State University. I help teach a lifespan development course. I've done it for about 3 semesters, and so there's a few things I've learned in my experience that I want to teach anybody else out there that either has trouble being a good student in the classroom, because this can help them, and other teachers out there that need effective teaching methods to help get their students' attention and to make their students better at learning. So let me get started. There's a big difference between a productive and unproductive professor or teacher, and that is their ability to hold their class's attention. If I can't hold my class's attention, they're not going to learn anything, right? So there's no reason for me to talk in the first place. I need to hold their attention. That's number one. How do I do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Number one, I like to be passionate and enthusiastic when I present material. This gets the kids excited. This gets the students excited about what we're talking about because I'm excited about it, and that kind of rubs off on them. And smile. Make it seem as though you're happy to share the information that you're presenting. Okay. This raises the energy in the room if you do that. So get happy and energized whenever you present material. Number two, use or create a more personal learning experience for the students, right? So get to know their names first and foremost, and use their names as much as you possibly can in the classroom setting. This is going to not only draw their attention, but create a more personal channel of communication where they're able to get more information out of the classroom. So one of the most important words in the English language, or any language for that matter to anybody, is their own name, right? If we're at a party or a group setting and someone says their name, we're instantly drawn to that person to see what they have to say. I like to incorporate that into my classroom. Number two, I get them interested in what I have to say by using a lot of examples. This holds their attention, and it makes difficult to understand ideas and very abstract ideas, and it gives them a more concrete base to them so that the students can understand them and really connect the dots and know what we're talking about. Use rich examples from your own background. That's the best source of examples. So in lifespan development, I talk a little bit about cognitive development in children, and there's 2 competing theorists out there. There is Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. I'm sure some of you have heard of those and some maybe not, and that's fine. But this is just going to go with my example here. So Jean Piaget, he basically represented an approach of cognitive development in which children learn best through independently engaging with their environment. Lev Vygotsky would say that children learn best and can become the best learners possible if we have them working with people that know more than them. Facilitated learning, or what he calls scaffolding. So we're going to have parents and teachers and more adept and more knowledgeable peers help the child out so that they can reach a greater potential. Okay. So those are a few things. Now, going back to that example, so what I like to say is that my parents fill those roles, Lev Vygotsky and Piaget's roles, pretty well, because, for example, like Piaget would say, independent is more engaging your world in a more independent way is a better way to learn. My dad, he used this in his approach in helping me deal with homework problems that I was struggling with. He believed that letting me do it on my own would help me develop better problem-solving abilities that would transfer to other areas of my life, as well as coping mechanisms that would help me in the future. Now, my mom kind of took Lev Vygotsky's side, which basically said that she would help me in homework, with homework, and she would help me through those difficult math problems to master the material, because she believed that I could progress much more by myself, with her help than I could by myself. Okay, so use examples to clarify as many points as you possibly can. Okay. And to hold the class's attention. Now, let's talk a little bit about how to make a more impactful learning experience for the students and how to make them better or even experts at learning. Okay, so In order to do that, I have to explain a very simple but very important concept. This is called meta-comprehension. What meta-comprehension is just simply our understanding of how well we're actually comprehending material. So when I read a couple of paragraphs in a book, I may think, okay, yeah, I really understood that. Or maybe I didn't understand that much. Now, your meta-comprehension can be accurate or inaccurate. So either it can be accurate, and what I think I'm understanding in real life is the same as what I'm in reality actually understanding based on test scores, or it can be inaccurate in that what I think I know, I really don't know. I see this a lot of time in my classroom with certain students, especially people that are underperforming. They tend to overestimate how well they're going to do on a test. They tend to guess that they're going to get a B or an A when really they're going to get a C. So they don't study as much as they do. So there's a few techniques that I implement to give these students a better understanding of how well they're actually comprehending the material, to create a larger room for improvement and a higher potential in them, ultimately. So a few things I do to make more accurate meta-comprehension of my students. Number one, I like to test my students or give them pre-tests before the main test when they go to see the actual professor in lecture. So that has there's two reasons why I do that. Number one, it helps them with their memory of it. Anytime we test material, it's called the testing effect. People retain that a little better than before the test. And number two, and more importantly, it gives them the ability to see where they are, at what points they're actually understanding from the material, and what sections they're having trouble with understanding, so they can go back and review those sections before the test, making their meta-comprehension more accurate. Okay. Another thing I like to do is I promote active reading strategies. I tell my students to read a couple of paragraphs in a book and then think to themselves simply, okay, I understood that, or maybe I didn't understand that. And that way they can gauge their understanding of the material better instead of just reading from the first word in a chapter to the end of the chapter without even thinking what they're understanding. Okay, so now I want to briefly talk about how to give the students a deep and rich understanding of the material. We have to elaborate on what we're talking about in class. So that maybe implies a couple of different methods. Number one, I'm going to relate what we're talking about earlier in the semester to later points in the semester. In the beginning of the semester, we talked a lot about prenatal development. We talk about embryos and fetuses. Now, the fetus shows a pattern of development that's called the proximal distal pattern of development. And that simply means that the fetus develops things closer to the main structure of the body, like the heart, sooner than they develop things farther away from the body, like their fingers or their toes. Now, this is seen in later parts of the development when the child is few years of age, in which they develop their gross motor coordination much sooner than they develop their fine motor coordination. So they're walking and running and using the structures closer to their body much sooner than they're able to write in cursive and tie their shoes with structures farther away from their body. Okay? Connecting the dots, it gives people a big picture of the class. I also like to apply what I'm teaching in class to practical issues that really matter to the students, right? So eventually most of us are most likely probably going to be become parents. So I like to teach my students, how can we as parents make our children more creative, make them more intellectually better adept in this world. How can we make them more morally excellent, okay? Those are the practical issues I look at, and that really gives students motivation to participate and learn. And finally, the self-reference effect. All this means is that whatever we're learning, in class or out of class, if we relate that information and knowledge to our own lives, we're much more likely to remember it later on. Okay, so I simply have them write a paragraph after they get done with their actual professor. They come to my class right after that, and I have them write a paragraph about what they learned in the lecture and relating that to their own lives. So that's it, guys. I hope you learned a little something. Again, I'm sorry this kind of deviated from the norm, but what I usually talk about. But this is good stuff to know as students and as teachers, and I really hope you guys take advantage of it because it's going to benefit not only you, but others around you. All right? Thanks for watching, and see you next time.